The probe had been humanity's proudest achievement. A small vessel no bigger than an old cargo container, equipped with Earth's first functioning faster-than-light drive. Dr. James Okonkwo remembered the day they launched it from the hidden facility on the far side of the moon. The celebrations, the champagne, the hope that humanity might finally reach the stars, that was 6 months ago. Now James stood in the emergency session of the United Defense Council, watching the holographic display with a sick feeling in his stomach. The probe had found something, or rather something had found the probe. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the front of the room, her gray uniform crisp despite the late hour. Her dark eyes were fixed on the alien transmission playing on loop. The creature on the screen was unlike anything humanity had imagined. It stood on 4 legs with a body covered in blue-black chitin that reflected the light like polished metal. Its head was elongated, featuring multiple eyes arranged in a circular pattern. When it spoke, the translation software struggled to keep up. Primitive species of the 3rd planet, the alien's voice came through with mechanical precision. You have been detected by the Galactic Convergence. Your uncontrolled expansion into regulated space is a violation of established order. You will surrender all military assets, submit to resource extraction protocols, and accept integration into the Convergence under Velkari administration. You have 48 hours to comply. Resistance will result in pacification measures. The message ended. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Pacification measures? Shouted Ambassador Liu, slamming his hand on the table. They're threatening to exterminate us. We don't know that, replied Minister Okafor, though his voice shook. Perhaps they mean something else. We should respond diplomatically. Diplomatically? Admiral Chen's voice cut through the noise like a knife. Everyone fell silent. They detected one probe, one small vessel, and their response is to demand our complete surrender. Does that sound like a species interested in diplomacy? James cleared his throat. All eyes turned to him. As the chief xenobiologist for the Defense Council, his opinion carried weight. Admiral Chen is correct. I've analyzed their transmission, their body language, everything. This Velkari representative displays all the signs of a predator species that has never been challenged. Look at the posture, the tone. This isn't a negotiation. It's a declaration of ownership. Then what do we do? Asked Minister Okafor. We've barely managed 3 manned missions to Mars. They crossed light years to deliver this message. The technological gap must be enormous. Sarah Chen walked slowly around the holographic display. Her face was carved from stone, showing nothing. But James had worked with her for 15 years. He knew that look. She was planning something. The gap may not be as large as they think, Sarah said quietly. For 50 years, we've been detecting radio signals from deep space. Strange patterns. Energy signatures. We knew someone was out there. Did everyone forget why we built the Ares network? The Ares network. James felt a cold smile forming. Of course. The atmospheric resonance energy shield, a global defense system that had consumed trillions of dollars and required the cooperation of every nation on Earth. Officially, it was protection against solar flares and cosmic radiation. Unofficially, it was something else entirely. The public thinks Ares is for solar storms, continued Sarah. But this council authorized its true purpose: defense against orbital attack. We've been preparing for this day since we first heard those signals. But that's just a shield, protested Ambassador Liu. What about weapons? What about ships? You saw their vessel. It was the size of a city. Yes, I saw it, Sarah replied. I also saw that it relied on plasma-based weapons and conventional propulsion with a gravity assist. Their ship is impressive, but it's not magic. And while they've been comfortable in their dominance, we've been innovating out of necessity. She pulled up another display. Images of orbital platforms, underground facilities, ocean-based installations. For 30 years, under the cover of various national projects, we've been building a defense network. Not in the open where satellites could see it. Underground, underwater, hidden in the asteroid belt. We knew they were out there. We knew they might not be friendly. James watched as council members leaned forward, seeing for the first time the true scale of Earth's secret preparations. Railgun installations in the Mariana Trench, nuclear-pumped laser arrays in hollowed-out mountains, antimatter production facilities on the dark side of the moon. This is insane, whispered Minister Okafor. The cost alone. How did you hide this? We didn't hide it. replied Counselor Yin Zhao, speaking for the first time. The elderly woman had run Earth's intelligence services for 3 decades. We buried it in plain sight. Climate control projects, deep-sea research, mining operations. Humanity has always been good at military deception. We just applied it on a global scale. The implications settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Earth had been preparing for war against an unknown enemy for half a century, and now that enemy had arrived. So what do we tell them? Asked Ambassador Liu. Do we buy time? Pretend to negotiate while we mobilize? Sarah Chen looked at the frozen image of the Velkari representative. The creature's multiple eyes seemed to stare through the screen with absolute certainty of its superiority. She had seen that look before, in the eyes of warlords during the water wars, men who thought they were untouchable, right up until they weren't. We tell them the truth, Sarah said. We tell them exactly what humanity thinks of their ultimatum. 47 hours later, the response was transmitted on all frequencies. The Velkari had been waiting, confident that the primitive humans would see reason when faced with superior force. Archon Zekthar, commander of the Velkari Expeditionary Fleet, had conquered 14 species in his career. None had taken more than a week to break. He watched with amusement as the human transmission began. The creature on screen was smaller than a Velkari, with soft skin and inadequate natural defenses. It wore some kind of cloth covering and stood rigidly straight. The human appeared to be female based on the intelligence reports. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Forces, the human said. Her voice was steady, showing no fear. Zekthar found this curious but not concerning. Some species showed bravado before the inevitable submission. We have received your ultimatum. We have considered your terms, and we have prepared our response. Zekthar leaned forward slightly. Here it comes, he thought. The begging, the bargaining, the offers of partial compliance. Come and take it, Sarah Chen said simply. Then the transmission ended. The bridge of Zekthar's command ship fell silent. His subordinates looked at each other in confusion. Surely they had misunderstood. Surely the translation was incorrect. Analysis, Zekthar demanded. Archon, the translation is accurate, replied his communications officer. The humans have refused our terms. The phrase "come and take it" is a colloquial expression indicating defiance and a challenge to combat. Zekthar felt something he hadn't experienced in many years. Surprise. These primitives, with their single planet and crude technology, had actually said no. It was almost refreshing. Most species collapsed at the first show of force. Very well. Zekthar clicked his mandibles in what passed for a Velkari smile. If they wish to learn their place through suffering, we will teach them. Prepare the pacification fleet. Standard deployment. 300 vessels should be more than sufficient. His second-in-command, Vorix, hesitated. Archon 300? For a single planet? That seems excessive. It's a demonstration, Zekthar explained patiently. The other species of the Convergence will hear of this. They will hear that humans defied us, and they will hear how quickly we crushed that defiance. 300 ships will make the lesson clear. Resistance is futile. The fleet departed within hours. 300 vessels of various sizes, from small corvettes to massive dreadnoughts. Each ship was a masterpiece of Velkari engineering, equipped with plasma cannons that could melt through any known armor, shields that could deflect kinetic impacts, and faster-than-light drives that bent space itself. Zekthar stood on his bridge as they entered the human system. The star they called Sol burned yellow and bright. The third planet was a beautiful blue and green marble. It seemed almost ashamed to pacify it, but the Convergence had rules. Order must be maintained. Scanning for defense installations, reported the sensor officer. Detecting minimal orbital structures. No significant military vessels. No defensive satellites. Archon, they appear to have evacuated their orbital space entirely. Fear, Zekthar concluded. They've pulled back to their planet, hoping their shields and bunkers will save them. It's a common reaction. Proceed to the moon. We'll establish a forward position there and broadcast our final demand. The fleet moved into lunar orbit without incident. Earth hung in the distance, seemingly defenseless. Zekthar had his communications officer send one more message, offering the humans a chance to surrender now that they could see the fleet arrayed against them. No response came. Very well, Zekthar sighed. Prepare orbital bombardment. Target selection. One major population center. Something large enough to break their Morale, but not so destructive that we damage the planet's resource potential. The settlement designated Sydney meets those parameters, reported the tactical officer. Population approximately 4 million. Located on a coast away from major resource deposits. Perfect. Begin bombardment in 10 minutes. Record everything. This will serve as an educational document for future conquests. Zekthar watched the countdown timer. He felt a small twinge of something almost like regret. 4 million lives would end in fire. But they had chosen this. They had been given a chance to surrender peacefully. The convergence way was harsh but necessary. Primitive species needed to learn their place in the galactic order. The timer reached 0. Fire, Zekthar commanded. 60 plasma cannons discharged simultaneously, their beams converging on a single point above the Australian coast. Enough energy to vaporize a mountain. Concentrated on one city, the beams lanced down through space, crossing the distance between the moon and Earth in seconds. And then something impossible happened. The beams stopped. Just stopped as if they had hit an invisible wall. The plasma dissipated against a massive electromagnetic field that suddenly blazed into existence, covering the entire continent. The energy that should have destroyed Sydney instead scattered harmlessly into the atmosphere, creating an aurora that painted the sky in brilliant colors. Alarm screamed across Zekthar's bridge. His sensor officer was shouting something about massive power readings. The entire planet was lighting up like a star. Energy signatures erupting from thousands of points across its surface. What is that? Zekthar demanded, his confidence suddenly fracturing. What are those readings? Unknown defensive network, Archon, the sensor officer reported, his voice shaking. It's everywhere. Under the oceans, underground, in the polar regions. The entire planet is one giant defensive installation. And Archon, they're powering up weapons, thousands of them. Zekthar stared at the display, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. This wasn't possible. The humans were primitive. They had barely achieved basic spaceflight. Yet here they were, with a planetary defense network that had just blocked an assault that should have been devastating. A new transmission came through. The human admiral appeared on screen again. This time she was smiling. It was not a friendly smile. You came to our home, Sarah Chen said softly. You threatened our families. You tried to murder 4 million people to make a point. Did you really think we would just roll over? Did you really think we wouldn't be ready? Zekthar found his voice. You hid all of this? We've been watching you for 50 years, Sarah replied. We've been listening to your radio chatter, tracking your ships, studying your tactics. We knew someone was out there. We knew they might not be friendly. So we prepared. We built weapons you can't imagine. We fortified our world, and we waited. The Admiral leaned closer to the camera. You made one move. You tried to destroy Sydney. That was your mistake. Now you're going to regret it. All of it. The transmission ended. Zekthar turned to his tactical officer, trying to maintain control. Status report. What are we facing? Before the officer could answer, the sensors erupted with new contacts. Ships were emerging from everywhere. From the oceans, from underground silos, from the asteroid belt. Hundreds of vessels, appearing as if by magic from hiding places the Velkari scanners had never detected. And then the first human railgun fired. A tungsten rod, accelerated to a significant fraction of the speed of light, crossed the distance between Earth and the moon in less than a second. It struck a Velkari corvette amidships, and the ship simply ceased to exist, vaporized by the kinetic impact. Evasive action, Zekthar screamed. Return fire! All ships engage! But the humans weren't done. Swarms of drones, thousands of them, erupted from hidden bays on Earth's surface. Nuclear-pumped lasers began firing from installations on the moon that the Velkari had somehow missed. Antimatter missiles streaked up from Earth's surface, each one powerful enough to destroy a capital ship. The battle for Earth had begun, and for the first time in his long military career, Archon Zekthar felt something he had never expected to feel again. Fear. The first Velkari corvette died in silence. There was no sound in space, no dramatic explosion like in the old movies. One moment the ship was there, and the next it was simply gone, transformed into a cloud of superheated plasma by the railgun strike. The debris spread out in a perfect sphere, glowing orange as it cooled. Captain Maria Santos watched from her command station deep beneath the surface of the moon. Her installation, designated Lunar Defense Platform 7, had been her home for 3 years. The public didn't know it existed. Most of Earth's military didn't know it existed. But it had been built over 20 years by crews who thought they were mining helium-3 for fusion reactors. They were. But they were also building weapons platforms. "Target destroyed," reported her weapons officer, a young woman named Park. "Railgun 1 is cycling. Ready to fire again in 40 seconds. Hold fire," Maria ordered. "Let's see what they do." On the main display, the Valkyrie fleet was reacting to the loss of their ship. The neat formation was breaking apart as ships scattered, trying to present harder targets. Their plasma cannons were charging, targeting solutions being calculated. They were fast, Maria had to admit. Well-trained, but they were also confused. "They're looking for the shooter," observed Lieutenant Chen at the sensor station. "They're scanning the moon's surface, but they can't find us. The camouflage is holding." Maria allowed herself a small smile. The lunar installations had been hidden beneath false craters and mineral deposits. Their heat signatures were masked by geothermal vents, both natural and artificial. To any scanner, they looked like nothing more than interesting geological features. "Multiple contacts emerging from Earth's surface," Chen reported. "Looks like Admiral Reeves is bringing up the Pacific Fleet." On the display, dozens of ships were rising from the ocean. They looked nothing like traditional spacecraft. They were sleek and black, designed for stealth rather than intimidation. Each one had been built in underwater shipyards, tested in the crushing pressures of the deep ocean, and kept hidden under hundreds of meters of water. The Valkyrie were still trying to figure out where the railgun shot had come from when the Pacific Fleet opened fire. Missiles streaked upward, propelled by conventional rockets that would have looked primitive to the aliens. But the warheads were anything but conventional. Antimatter, produced in tiny quantities over decades and stored in magnetic containment fields, each missile carrying enough destructive power to level a city. 6 Valkyrie ships died in the first salvo. The antimatter warheads detonated in perfect synchronization, creating miniature suns that consumed everything within a kilometer radius. The shields that had protected the alien vessels from conventional weapons simply couldn't handle the fundamental annihilation of matter meeting antimatter. "Tracking enemy return fire," Chen called out. "Plasma discharge from multiple vessels. Trajectory indicates they're targeting the Pacific Fleet." "Ares network is responding," reported another officer. Maria switched her view to show Earth's atmosphere. The blue glow of the electromagnetic shield was intensifying, forming a dome over the entire Pacific Ocean. The Valkyrie plasma beams, brilliant lances of superheated matter, struck the shield and dispersed. Some of the energy bled through, superheating water into steam, but the ships below remained untouched. "They're learning," Maria muttered, adjusting their tactics, splitting their fire, trying to overwhelm the shield in specific areas. It was true. The Valkyrie were adapting quickly. Instead of scattered shots, they were concentrating fire on single points, trying to punch through the Ares network by sheer force. It might have worked if Earth only had the shield. "Railgun 2 is ready," Park reported. "Fire," Maria ordered. Another Valkyrie ship vanished. This time it was a larger vessel, possibly a destroyer. The tungsten penetrator struck it at the connection point between 2 hull sections, and the ship broke apart like a child's toy. Atmosphere vented in crystalline clouds. Bodies tumbled into space. Maria felt a momentary pang of guilt, then pushed it aside. These aliens had tried to murder 4 million people in Sydney. They had come to Earth with the explicit purpose of subjugation or extermination. This wasn't murder. This was survival. "Atlantic Fleet is launching," Chen announced. "Arctic installations are coming online. The asteroid belt defense network is activating." The Valkyrie fleet was now surrounded. Ships emerged from Earth's oceans, from underground silos on the continents, from hidden stations on Mars that had been disguised as failed colony attempts, and from the asteroid belt. Automated weapons platforms that had been slowly built over 15 years began to wake up. Archon Zekthar's command ship shuddered as a missile detonated against its shields. The ship's defensive systems had managed to intercept the warhead before it got close enough for full effect, but the shields were down to 70%. Around him, his bridge crew was struggling to coordinate a defense against enemies coming from every direction. "Status report," he demanded, his mandibles clicking rapidly in a sign of stress. "We've lost 18 ships," Vorex reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Enemy forces number in the hundreds." They're using weapons we've never encountered. Kinetic projectiles at relativistic speeds, antimatter warheads, coordinated drone swarms. Our shields are effective against their missiles, but these railgun weapons go straight through. How is this possible? Zekthar watched another of his ships die, this time torn apart by a swarm of small drones that had attached themselves to the hull and detonated simultaneously. They're a primitive species. Archon, with respect, they clearly are not primitive, Voryx replied. Our intelligence was wrong. Catastrophically wrong, a new alert sounded. The sensor officer looked up with what could only be described as horror in his eyes. Archon were detecting massive power buildups in the asteroid belt. Hundreds of energy signatures. They're everywhere. On the tactical display, the asteroid belt suddenly lit up like a string of lights. Each signature represented a weapons platform, hidden among the rocks for years, waiting for this moment. As they watched, the platforms began firing, not at the fleet directly, but at the asteroids themselves. They're using the asteroids as ammunition, breathed Voryx. They're turning the entire belt into a weapon. He was right. Precisely calculated explosions were pushing asteroids out of their orbits, sending them on collision courses with the Velkari fleet. Rocks the size of buildings, some the size of mountains, began their deadly journey. It would take hours for them to arrive, but when they did, they would strike with the force of nuclear weapons. Full retreat. Zekthar ordered. All ships, emergency FTL jump. We need to regroup and reassess. Archon, we can't leave yet, the navigation officer protested. Our FTL drives need 3 hours to charge for a jump from this deep in the gravity well. 3 hours. They would have to survive 3 hours of this onslaught before they could escape. Zekthar felt his confidence, built over decades of easy victories, crumbling like sand. Then we fight, he said. All ships, formation Delta. Concentrate fire on the nearest enemy vessels. We make them pay for every ship they take. The Velkari fleet began to rally. They were experienced warriors, veterans of many campaigns. They tightened their formation, creating overlapping fields of fire. Their plasma cannons began a systematic bombardment of Earth ships, focusing fire to overwhelm individual vessels. It worked. A human destroyer caught in the crossfire of 5 Velkari ships saw its shields collapse. Plasma beams melted through the hull. The ship broke apart, spilling atmosphere and bodies into the void. Then another human ship died, and another. The Velkari were taking losses, but they were inflicting them too. For a moment, Zekthar felt hope. Perhaps they could win this after all. Perhaps they could teach these humans their place. That hope died when Earth deployed the swarms. They came from the surface like locusts, millions of them. Small drones, each no bigger than a human hand, but there were so many. They didn't have powerful weapons. They didn't need them. They had numbers and they had intelligence. The swarms moved with eerie coordination, flowing around the battlefield like schools of fish. They avoided the Velkari defensive fire with impossible grace, their movements controlled by artificial intelligence that could calculate trajectories faster than any organic mind. When they reached a target ship, they attached themselves to the hull, seeking out specific weak points. Engine exhausts. Sensor arrays. Weapon ports. A Velkari cruiser tried to shake them off by spinning wildly, but the drones held on with magnetic grips. Within minutes, the ship was covered. Then they detonated, thousands of small explosives going off in perfect synchronization. The individual explosions were tiny, but together they stripped away the ship's armor, exposed its internal systems, and left it helpless. Human ships moved in to finish the job. This is madness, Zekthar whispered, watching another of his vessels succumb to the swarms. No species fights like this. Where is their honor? Where is their restraint? Voryx turned to look at his commander. Archon, I don't think they understand those concepts. Look at their tactics. They're not trying to defeat us in glorious combat. They're trying to destroy us as efficiently as possible. Every weapon, every strategy, it's all designed for one purpose. To kill. It was true. The humans fought with a ruthlessness that shocked the Velkari. They didn't engage in single combat or honor duels. They swarmed targets with overwhelming force. They used deception, hiding ships in debris fields and ambushing Velkari vessels that came to investigate. They booby-trapped disabled ships, turning them into massive bombs that detonated when rescue teams approached. More disturbing were the intercepted communications. The Velkari had broken human encryption within the first hour of combat. What they heard chilled them. The humans weren't angry or afraid. They were calm, professional. They discussed the destruction of alien ships the way someone might discuss a construction project. Target acquired, solution calculated, weapon deployed, target destroyed next. There was no rage in their voices. No fear, just cold efficiency. Archon, we've lost 70 ships, Vorix reported. 2 hours had passed. 1 more hour until they could jump away. At this rate, we won't have a fleet left to retreat with. Zekthar knew he was right. The humans had them trapped in a killing field and they were being methodically destroyed. Every strategy the Valkyrie tried, the humans countered. When they clustered together for mutual defense, the humans used their antimatter weapons to devastating effect. When they spread out, the humans hunted them down with those terrifying swarms. Broadcast a message, Zekthar ordered. Request a ceasefire. Request negotiations. The message was sent. For several minutes, there was no response. The human attacks continued without pause. Then finally, a transmission came through. It was the Admiral again, Sarah Chen. She looked tired, but her eyes were hard. Now you want to talk, she said. After you tried to obliterate Sydney? After you came here with 300 warships to pacify us? We underestimated you, Zekthar admitted. We were wrong. Please let us leave. We will not return. Sarah Chen was quiet for a long moment. Behind her, Zekthar could see other humans working at stations, their faces illuminated by displays. They looked so fragile, these humans. Soft skin, no natural armor or weapons. Yet they had built all of this. You don't understand, Sarah said finally. This isn't about territory. This isn't about resources. You came to our home and tried to kill our children. You declared war on humanity, and we don't do wars halfway. What do you want? Zekthar asked, his voice breaking. We want you to understand something, Sarah replied. You thought we were weak because we live on a single planet. You thought we were primitive because we hadn't conquered other worlds. But do you know why we never left Earth? Zekthar didn't answer. Because Earth is a death world, Sarah continued. A planet where everything is trying to kill you. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans. We spent millions of years learning to survive on a planet that didn't want us alive. We learned to make weapons from everything. We learned to plan, to deceive, to cooperate, to wage total war against threats to our existence. And now you've made yourself that threat. She leaned forward. You wanted to see what humans do when they're threatened? Watch. The transmission ended, and then the human attacks intensified. Ships that had been holding back joined the battle. Weapon platforms that had been conserving ammunition opened up at full power. The asteroid belt defense network, which had been calculating trajectories, now had solutions ready. Rocks began raining down on the Valkyrie fleet, impossible to dodge, impossible to stop. In that moment, Archon Zekthar understood. The humans hadn't been fighting at full strength. They had been testing the Valkyrie, learning their tactics, finding their weaknesses. Now they were done learning. Now they were killing in earnest. The final hour was a nightmare. Valkyrie ships died one after another, their shields overwhelmed, their hulls breached, their crews exposed to vacuum. Those that survived did so because the humans had simply run out of ammunition or targets, not because they had escaped through skill. When the FTL drives finally charged and the surviving ships jumped away, only 73 vessels remained of the original 300. Zekthar's command ship was among them, damaged but functional. As they emerged from FTL space far from Earth, Zekthar looked at the casualty reports. 73 ships out of 300. A 76% casualty rate, the worst defeat in Valkyrie history, and the humans had let them go. That was perhaps the most terrifying thing. They could have destroyed the fleet completely. But they had let survivors escape, so they could tell the story, so everyone would know what happened when you threatened Earth. The Convergence Council chamber was a massive structure built on the neutral world of Tarsus Prime. Representatives from 47 species gathered in a circular arrangement, each delegation separated by holographic barriers that adjusted atmosphere and gravity to suit their species' needs. The chamber had been built to demonstrate unity and cooperation. Today it demonstrated chaos. This is impossible. The Thaxian representative slammed a manipulator appendage against his console. The insectoid being's wings buzzed with agitation. The Valkyrie are the finest warriors in the Convergence. How could primitives destroy over 200 of their ships? The reports have been verified, replied Archon Zekthar. He stood in the Valkyrie section, his chitin dulled by stress and fatigue. I was there. I saw it with my own eyes. The humans have been preparing for this encounter for decades. They possess weapons and strategies we have never encountered. A rippling sound came from the Aquari delegation, their species' version of laughter. You were ambushed by a single planet species, the Aquari speaker said, their translated voice dripping with contempt. This reflects poorly on Velkari competence, not human capability. Then perhaps you would like to teach them their place? Zekthar's voice was sharp. By all means, send your fleets to the human system. I'm certain they will welcome the opportunity to demonstrate their capabilities again. The Aquari representative fell silent. Around the chamber, other delegates shifted uncomfortably. The recordings from the battle had been shared with all Convergence members. Watching those recordings was one thing. Volunteering to face those weapons was another matter entirely. Council Speaker Miras, a tall, crystalline being from the silicon-based crane species, raised a limb for attention. The question is not whether the humans are capable. Clearly they are. The question is what we do about it. They have violated convergence law by refusing integration. They have destroyed convergence vessels. This cannot stand. I agree, said the Dorvani representative, a mammalian species known for their diplomatic skills. But perhaps a different approach is warranted. Military force has failed. Perhaps we should attempt genuine negotiation? Negotiation? Zekthar's laugh was bitter. You think they will negotiate after what we tried to do? I attempted to destroy one of their cities. 4 million of their people would have died if their shields had failed. They will not forget that. Then what do you suggest? Asked Speaker Miras. The Convergence cannot simply allow this challenge to go unanswered. Other species will see human defiance as a sign of our weakness. The chamber erupted in debate again. Some called for immediate military action. Others urged caution. A few even suggested accepting human independence and leaving them alone. But the majority opinion was clear. The humans had to be brought to heel, or the Convergence itself would begin to fracture. Finally, the Sorvex representative spoke. The Sorvex were an ancient species, one of the founding members of the Convergence. When they spoke, others listened. We will assemble a grand armada, the reptilian being announced. 6 species will contribute forces. 2,000 ships. We will enter the human system not to negotiate, but to demonstrate that resistance is futile. They defeated a pacification fleet. Let us see how they fare against true military might. The vote was called. The resolution passed. 6 species pledged their fleets to the cause. The humans would face the largest military operation in Convergence history. On Earth, preparations were already underway. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the war room, deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean. The facility had been built inside a seamount, disguised as a research station studying deep-sea life. Around her, holographic displays showed the entire solar system. Every human ship, every defense platform, every hidden weapon was marked on the map. Intelligence reports the Convergence is assembling an armada, reported General Zhao, head of Earth's military intelligence. 2,000 ships from multiple species. They'll arrive in approximately 3 weeks. 3 weeks, Sarah murmured. Time enough. How are our resources? Railgun ammunition is at 70% capacity. We used more than expected in the first battle. Antimatter reserves are down to 40%. Drone swarms are at full capacity, but production is struggling to keep up. The Ares network needs maintenance after absorbing that much plasma fire. Dr. James Okonkwo, who had been working with the military since the first contact, spoke up. We have another weapon available. One we didn't use in the first battle. Sarah turned to him. The cyber warfare package? Yes, Dr. Foster's team has been analyzing the Velkari computer systems from their intercepted communications. We've identified multiple vulnerabilities. Their entire fleet operates on networked systems with minimal internal firewalls. They never considered the possibility of AI-based attacks, because they don't have true artificial intelligence, Sarah said thoughtfully. We're the only species that created digital minds. Exactly. To them, computers are tools, fast calculators. They never imagined computers that could think, adapt, and attack. Sarah looked at the star map, at the markers showing where the enemy fleet would arrive. What can the cyber package do? Dr. Foster herself entered the room, a slight woman with silver hair and tired eyes. She had been working for 72 hours straight. We can cripple them, she said simply. Navigation systems, weapons targeting, life support, communications. If we can get our code into their networks, we can turn their own ships against them. How do we deliver it? asked General Zhao. Foster smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. We let them capture one of our ships. The plan was elegantly simple. A small human vessel would be damaged and left in the path of the incoming Convergence Armada. When they captured it and brought it aboard for analysis, as surely they would, the ship's computer would infect their systems. Then the real war would begin. 3 weeks later, the Convergence Armada arrived at the edge of the Sol system. 2,000 ships representing 6 different species, each with their own designs and capabilities, but they all shared one thing in common. They were networked together for coordination, their computers constantly communicating to maintain formation and share tactical data. It was the largest weakness they could have had. Admiral Kethras, a Sorvex veteran, commanded the Armada from his flagship. He reviewed the battle plans with satisfaction. The humans had surprised the Velkari, but the Velkari had been arrogant. Kethras would not make that mistake. His fleet would advance slowly, maintaining formation. They would overwhelm the human defenses through sheer numbers and firepower. Detecting a human vessel, reported the sensor officer. Small ship, heavily damaged. Appears to be drifting. Life signs are weak. A survivor from their defensive preparations, Kethras mused. Bring it aboard. Perhaps we can learn something from their technology. The ship was tractored into the flagship's hangar bay. A boarding team approached carefully, weapons ready. But there was no resistance. The human crew was unconscious, overcome by what appeared to be a life support failure. The ship's computer was still running, trying futilely to repair the damage. The Convergence technicians interfaced with the human computer, downloading its data. They wanted to understand human technology, find weaknesses in their systems. Instead, they opened the door to something they couldn't comprehend. The AI warfare package spread through the Convergence network like wildfire. It was not a simple virus. It was a collection of learning algorithms, each designed to find and exploit vulnerabilities. Within minutes, it had mapped the entire Convergence network. Within an hour, it had penetrated every major system on every ship. And then Dr. Foster gave the command. Across the Armada, ships began to malfunction. Navigation systems failed, sending vessels careening off course. Weapons targeting locked onto friendly ships instead of enemies. Life support systems shut down in random sections. Communications became garbled as the AI rewrote protocols on the fly. What's happening? Kethras demanded as his bridge descended into chaos. Unknown hostile code in our systems, the technical officer shouted. It's everywhere. I can't stop it. On the tactical display, the neat formation of the Armada collapsed. Ships collided with each other. Some fired on their own allies, their targeting computers hijacked. The Convergence fleet, so powerful moments ago, was now fighting itself. Then the human fleet attacked. They came from everywhere, just like before. But this time they knew exactly where to strike. The AI had given them complete information about every ship in the Armada. Weak points in shields, gaps in armor, weapons that were offline. The humans exploited every vulnerability with surgical precision. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka was among the first wave of fighters. Her small, nimble craft danced through the chaos of the enemy fleet, her weapons controlled by an AI that predicted enemy movements before they happened. She had trained for this her entire adult life. 3 generations of her family had been pilots. They had prepared for the day when humanity would have to defend itself against the universe. Target the Sorvex dreadnought, her AI companion, which she had named Akira, advised. Its port shields are down due to a power rerouting error in their network. Yuki didn't hesitate. She dove toward the massive ship, dodging debris and defensive fire. The dreadnought was the size of a city, bristling with weapons. But those weapons were pointed in the wrong directions. Their targeting systems compromised. She lined up her shot and fired a salvo of armor-piercing missiles. They struck the exposed section of hull and detonated inside the ship. Secondary explosions rippled through the dreadnought's interior. The massive vessel began to list, its engines failing. Multiple fighters converging on your position, Akira warned. Recommend evasive maneuvers. Negative, Yuki said calmly. If I break off now, the dreadnought might recover. Continue the attack. That course of action has a 78% probability of destruction. Noted. She pressed her attack, firing everything she had. The dreadnought's shields flickered and died. Its hull breached in multiple places. The massive ship was dying. So was Yuki's fighter. A lucky shot from a Convergence destroyer had clipped her port engine. She was venting fuel and losing power. Her ejection system was damaged. If she stayed with the fighter, she would die. Yuki looked at the dreadnought, at the thousands of lives aboard it, at the command center where Admiral Kethris was probably still trying to save his fleet. One more push. One more attack. She could take the command center with her. Akira, plot a collision course. All remaining power to engines. Yuki, that is not advisable. Survival probability drops to 0. I know. Do it anyway. Her fighter accelerated toward the dreadnought's command section. The aliens saw her coming, tried to shoot her down, but she was too fast and too close. At the last second, she armed her fighters self-destruct. For Earth, she whispered. The fighter struck the dreadnought's command center at full speed. The self-destruct detonated simultaneously. The explosion tore through the ship's core and the massive vessel broke apart. Admiral Kethris died instantly, along with his entire command staff. The Armada lost its central coordination, just as the cyber attacks reached their peak. The Convergence fleet, already crippled, began to collapse completely. But Yuki was not the only human willing to make that sacrifice. Across the battlefield, damaged human ships deliberately rammed enemy vessels rather than retreat. Pilots with failing systems chose to take one more enemy with them. The Convergence forces, already reeling from the cyber attacks, faced an enemy that seemed to have no fear of death. They're insane, a Thaxian captain broadcast on an open channel. They're ramming us. They're deliberately destroying themselves to take us down. It was true. The humans fought with a ferocity that terrified the Convergence forces. But more than that, they fought with intelligence. When ramming wasn't practical, they used deception. Human ships would fake distress, drawing in enemy vessels to rescue them, only to detonate hidden antimatter charges. They seeded debris fields with proximity mines. They broadcast false surrender signals on captured Convergence frequencies, luring ships into ambushes. Every tactic from human history, from every war humanity had fought against itself, was now deployed against the aliens. The Convergence had military traditions stretching back thousands of years. Humanity had war traditions stretching back millions. It was no contest. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Convergence Armada was destroyed. Of 2,000 ships, less than 300 limped away, their systems barely functional, their crews traumatized. The others were debris, floating monuments to the cost of underestimating humanity. On Earth, Sarah Chen received the casualty reports. 214 human ships destroyed, 30,000 casualties. The victory had been costly, but it had also been absolute. Around the solar system, human ships began the grim task of rescue and recovery. They rescued Convergence survivors from disabled ships, treating their wounded and housing their prisoners. The aliens, expecting execution or slavery, were shocked to receive medical care and decent treatment. "Why are you helping us?" a wounded Thaxian soldier asked the human medic treating his injuries. The medic, a young woman named Sarah Kim, continued bandaging the aliens' wounds. "Because the war is over for you. You're not a threat anymore. You're just someone who needs help. But we tried to kill you. We tried to destroy your world." Sarah Kim looked at the alien with tired eyes. "Yes, you did. And we killed a lot of you for it. But that doesn't mean we have to let you die when we can save you. That's what makes us different from you." The Thaxian soldier didn't understand. In Convergence culture, defeated enemies were enslaved or eliminated. Mercy was seen as weakness. But to humans, mercy was a choice made from a position of strength. It was a lesson the Convergence was about to learn in full. The galaxy had been watching. Every species in the Convergence, every independent world, every rival power had seen the broadcasts from the battle. They had watched as humanity defeated an armada with weapons and tactics the galaxy had never imagined. They had seen the human cyber warfare capabilities, their willingness to sacrifice themselves, their combination of advanced technology and primitive savagery, and they had all reached the same conclusion. Humanity was the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Commander Jinwoon had never expected to leave the solar system. He had trained as a deep space pilot, yes, but always with the assumption that he would defend Earth's territory. Now he found himself 3 light years from home, hunting. His ship, the Silent Arrow, was one of 20 vessels in the human pursuit fleet. They were hunting the remnants of the Convergence Armada, following them back to their bases. The mission parameters were clear: find their worlds, map their defenses, and send the message that Earth could reach anywhere. Tracking signature is holding steady, reported his sensor officer, Lieutenant Park. The Convergence ships are maintaining course for the Velkari home system. Of course they are, Jian said. They're running home to lick their wounds. They still don't understand what kind of war they started. The Silent Arrow was a new design built specifically for this kind of operation. It was small, fast, and almost impossible to detect. Its hull was coated with materials that absorbed sensor scans. Its engines ran cold, producing minimal heat signature. It could drift through space like a piece of debris, completely invisible to conventional scanners. Humans called them hunter-killer ships. The Convergence would learn to call them nightmares. Back on Earth, a different kind of warfare was unfolding. Dr. Rebecca Foster sat in her laboratory, surrounded by screens showing code scrolling past at inhuman speeds. She was watching her AI children at work, spreading through the Convergence's communication networks. "It's beautiful," she murmured to her assistant, Dr. Chen. "They built their entire civilization on networked computers, and they never once considered security against intelligent intrusion." "How deep have we penetrated?" Chen asked. "Everywhere." Rebecca pulled up a galactic map. Thousands of star systems glowed in various colors. Red systems are fully compromised. We have complete access to their networks. Yellow systems are partially compromised. Green systems we haven't reached yet. But give it time. Every ship that returns home carries our code. Every communication they send spreads it further. What can we do with this access? Rebecca's smile was cold. Anything we want. Read their communications. Steal their technology. Shut down their infrastructure. We could crash their economies. Disable their defenses, turn their own systems against them. The Convergence thought they were conquering a primitive species. Instead, they invited a digital plague into their civilization. Chen looked uncomfortable. Should we have this much power over them? Should they have tried to exterminate us? Rebecca countered. They made their choice. We're making ours. She pulled up another screen showing Convergence Council communications. Listen to this. It's from their emergency session yesterday. A translation played. Convergence leaders arguing, blaming each other, panicking. Some wanted to sue for peace. Others demanded a third attack. But all of them were terrified. They're fracturing, Rebecca observed. Some species want to withdraw from the Convergence entirely. Others want to negotiate with us. And a few are still stupid enough to think they can win. What's our response? We let them fracture? We encourage it. We send different messages to different species. Tell some that we're willing to talk. Tell others that we're coming for them. Create confusion. Destroy their unity. And while they're arguing among themselves, we fortify every human asset in the solar system. Mars had been transformed. What had been a small research colony 3 months ago was now a fortress world. Mass drivers the size of skyscrapers dotted the landscape, capable of launching projectiles that could cross the solar system in days. Defense platforms orbited the planet in layers, creating overlapping fields of fire. Underground facilities housed everything from weapons production to emergency shelters for the colonists. Jupiter's moons had become staging grounds for the outer system defense. Europa's ice-concealed submarine bases. Ganymede hosted railgun batteries that could threaten anything approaching the gas giant. Even Titan, distant Saturn's moon, now held human installations. The asteroid belt had evolved from a minefield into a fortress network. Automated platforms drifted among the rocks, appearing to be nothing more than mining equipment, but each one could deploy weapons on command. Some asteroids had been hollowed out and converted into hidden bases, capable of supporting human crews for years. And on Earth itself, the production facilities ran at maximum capacity. Every day, new ships rolled out of the orbital shipyards. New weapons were tested and deployed. New defensive systems came online. Humanity had been preparing for this war for 50 years. Now that the war had come, they were not slowing down. "We're making Earth's entire solar system into a weapon," General Zhao observed during a strategy meeting. "Every planet, every moon, every asteroid. If the Convergence comes back, they'll have to fight through layers of defense just to reach Earth." "Good," Admiral Sarah Chen replied. "Let them see what we've built. Let them understand that even if they somehow defeat us, the cost will be catastrophic." 3 weeks after the battle, Commander Jian Wu and his hunter-killer fleet reached the outer edge of Velkari space. They had tracked the retreating Convergence ships all the way home. mapping every system they passed through. Now they had eyes on the enemy's home territory. Scanning the Velkari home system, Lieutenant Park reported. Multiple orbital installations, defensive platforms, significant military presence. They've fortified since their fleet was destroyed. Expected, Jian said. How many ships? At least 500 in this system alone. More arriving from other territories. They're consolidating their forces. Jian studied the tactical display. 500 ships sounded impressive, but he knew what human weapons could do. The question was whether the Velkari had learned anything from their defeats. Deploy reconnaissance drones. I want detailed scans of every installation, every ship, every defensive position, and launch the communication package. The communication package was simple. A message, broadcast on all frequencies in all convergence languages. It said, "You came to our home. Now we've found yours. Surrender or learn what human siege warfare looks like." The Velkari response came quickly. Archon Zekthar himself appeared on the transmission. He looked older, his chitin dull, his movements slow. Defeat had aged him. "You have made your point," Zekthar said. "You are powerful. You are dangerous. What more do you want? Leave us in peace." Jean sent his response through the secure channel back to Earth where Admiral Chen was waiting. Her orders came back within minutes. Begin the siege. The hunter-killer fleet didn't attack directly. That wasn't their purpose. Instead, they began a campaign of psychological warfare that drove the Velkari to the edge of madness. Human ships would appear at the edge of sensor range, then vanish before defenders could respond. Automated drones would drift into the system, broadcasting haunting messages in the middle of the night cycle. "We're watching. We're waiting. We're coming." Convergent supply ships trying to reach the Velkari homeworld would disappear without a trace. Sometimes the crews were found, alive and unharmed, floating in escape pods with a simple message. "Go home. Tell them what we could have done." Defense platforms would malfunction, their targeting systems corrupted by the ever-present human cyber warfare programs. Communications would cut out at random, leaving stations isolated and afraid. The Velkari couldn't tell if they were under active attack or if their own systems were failing. This went on for weeks. The Velkari military was exhausted from constant alert status. Their civilian population was terrified. Ships that had been consolidated for defense were now needed to escort every supply convoy, stretching their forces thin. And then the humans escalated. Commander Wu's fleet was joined by a larger human task force, 50 ships equipped with the latest weapons. They didn't hide this time. They jumped into the system in full view of every sensor, forming up in a neat battle formation just outside the range of the Velkari defenses. Admiral Chen's face appeared on every screen in the system. "People of the Velkari Empire," she began. "Your leaders made a mistake. They thought they could conquer Earth. They were wrong. Now you're paying the price for their arrogance." She paused, letting that sink in. "But we are not the monsters you were told we are. We don't want to destroy your civilization. We want you to understand one simple fact. Earth is off limits. Attack us and we will respond with overwhelming force. Leave us alone, and we will leave you alone. To prove our sincerity, we're going to demonstrate our capabilities one more time. Watch closely." The human fleet opened fire, but not on the Velkari installations. Instead, they targeted a small moon on the outskirts of the system. It was uninhabited, a barren rock with no strategic value. The perfect demonstration target. Railguns fired, antimatter missiles launched. Directed energy weapons lanced out. The moon, roughly the size of Earth's moon, took the full force of humanity's arsenal. For 30 seconds, every weapon in the human fleet fired continuously. When the barrage ended, the moon was gone. Not damaged, not cracked. Gone. Vaporized into a cloud of superheated gas and debris. "That was 30 seconds of fire from 50 ships," Admiral Chen said calmly. "We have 200 more ships in production." "We can build more, can you?" "How many moons do you have? How many planets? How long can you last against an enemy that can do this?" The transmission ended. The human fleet held position, making no aggressive moves, simply waiting. In the Velkari command center, Archon Zekthar watched the debris cloud that had once been a moon and felt something inside him break. They couldn't fight this. They couldn't win. The humans could destroy their entire civilization, and there was nothing the Velkari could do to stop it. "Open a channel," he said quietly. "Surrender terms, whatever they want." But it wasn't just the Velkari who were watching. Every species in the convergence had seen that demonstration. Every independent world had monitored the transmission. The message was clear. Humanity could reach anywhere, destroy anything, and there was no defense against their weapons. The political shockwaves rippled across the galaxy. Species that had been part of the convergence for centuries began withdrawing their membership. Long-suppressed client species saw an opportunity and rebelled against their overlords. The entire structure of galactic politics, stable for thousands of years, began to crumble. And at the center of it all was Earth, a single planet that had upended everything. Dr. Okonkwo stood in the war room, watching reports come in from across the galaxy. "We've destabilized their entire civilization," he said to Admiral Chen. "There are wars breaking out everywhere. Species are fighting for independence. The convergence is collapsing." "Good," Sarah replied without emotion. "They built their order on conquest and subjugation. Let it burn. Maybe something better will rise from the ashes. And if it doesn't, what if we've just created chaos?" Sarah turned to face him. "James, they came to exterminate us. They tried to kill millions of our people without warning or provocation. Every species in that convergence was complicit in that attempt. If their civilization falls because they couldn't defeat us, that's not our fault. That's justice. Is it? Or is it just revenge? Can it be both?" Sarah's expression softened slightly. "I know what you're thinking. That we've become the monsters. That we've embraced total war and lost something of our humanity in the process. But ask yourself this. If we had been weaker, if we had been merciful, if we had tried to negotiate instead of fight, what would have happened?" James knew the answer. They would have destroyed us. Exactly. The galaxy isn't like Earth. Down there we had laws, treaties, international cooperation. We learned to resolve conflicts without total war. But out here it's still the jungle. The strong prey on the weak. And the convergence has been the apex predator for a very long time. She gestured at the star map, at the chaos spreading across the galaxy. They're learning what Earth learned millions of years ago. That there's always something more dangerous. That the hunter can become the hunted. And that the species from the death world doesn't play by anyone's rules but its own. "What happens now?" James asked. "Now?" Sarah smiled grimly. "Now we see if they're smart enough to accept our peace terms. And if they're not, we show them what human warfare looks like when we stop being merciful." Across the galaxy, the message was spreading. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they had arrived with weapons, tactics, and a willingness to use total war that terrified everyone. The convergence, the most powerful political entity in known space, was fracturing under the pressure of human military might. The hunters had become the hunted, and the prey from Earth was proving to be the most dangerous predator the galaxy had ever seen. 6 months had passed since the first contact. The Velkari homeworld, once the proud center of an empire spanning hundreds of systems, was now under siege. Not the violent, destructive siege that Archon Zekthar had expected, but something worse. A patient, methodical siege that slowly strangled the planet without firing a shot. Human ships controlled the approaches to the system. Nothing entered or left without human permission. Food supplies that once flowed freely from agricultural worlds were now irregular and insufficient. Medical supplies were running low. The population was not starving yet, but everyone understood that humanity held their lives in its hands. Zekthar stood in what remained of his command center, looking at reports that all told the same story. The Velkari Empire was finished. Of their 200 subject worlds, more than half had declared independence. The rest were in open rebellion or had simply stopped responding to commands. The military that had once numbered tens of thousands of ships was down to a few hundred, most of those damaged or obsolete. And everywhere, there were humans. Their small, stealthy ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Their cyber warfare programs had corrupted every computer system in Velkari space. Their broadcasts promised mercy to those who surrendered and destruction to those who resisted. And most terrifying of all, their offers were genuine. Species that surrendered were treated fairly, even well. Those that resisted were crushed without mercy. "Archon, we have an incoming transmission," his communications officer announced. "It's from the human fleet. Admiral Chen wishes to speak with you." Zekthar felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He knew what this would be. The final demand. Surrender or be destroyed. Part of him wanted to refuse, to go down fighting, to preserve some shred of Velkari honor, but he looked at his officers, exhausted from months of stress. He thought of the civilians on the planet below, afraid and hungry. He thought of what resistance would cost. "Accept the transmission," he said. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the screen. She looked different than she had 6 months ago. Older, more tired, but her eyes were still hard, still determined. Behind her, Zekthar could see what appeared to be a conference room. Other humans were present, along with holographic representations of various alien species. A peace conference, then. "Archon Zekthar," Sarah began, "we've been at war for 6 months. In that time, 15 convergent species have suffered military defeats. Your empire has collapsed. The convergence itself is fracturing. And for what? Because you thought we were weak. We were wrong," Zekthar said simply. "We underestimated you catastrophically. What more do you want me to say?" "I want you to understand why you were wrong," Sarah replied. "You looked at Earth and saw a single planet. You saw a species that had never left their home system. You assumed we were primitive because we hadn't conquered other worlds. But do you know why we never left Earth before we had to?" Zekthar didn't answer. He suspected this was not a question he was meant to respond to. "Because Earth is what we call a death world," Sarah continued. "A planet where everything is dangerous. Predators that hunt in packs, diseases that can wipe out entire populations, weather that can level cities, and other humans who spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. We didn't need to leave Earth to learn warfare. We were born into it." She leaned forward. "Every human alive today is descended from survivors. Survivors of predators, survivors of plagues, survivors of wars. We learned to make weapons from rocks and sticks. We learned to cooperate in ways that let us take down prey 10 times our size. We learned to plan, to deceive, to adapt, to never give up no matter how bad things got. That's what 4 million years of evolution on a death world teaches you. So when you came to our home and tried to kill our children, you didn't just attack a species. You threatened the survivors of millions of years of death and warfare, and we responded the only way we know how. Totalva. Complete commitment. Victory or extinction with no middle ground." Zekthar felt something cold settle in his chest. He finally understood. The humans weren't cruel or evil. They were survivors playing by the rules of their home world. Rules that said when threatened, you fought with everything you had. Rules that said mercy was something you earned by not being a threat. Rules written in blood over millions of years. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. Sarah pulled up a document. "Complete demilitarization of all Velkari forces. You keep enough ships for system defense and law enforcement, nothing more. Full reparations for the attempted attack on Earth. We'll work out a payment schedule that won't destroy your economy, but you will pay. Complete technology exchange. You teach us what you know. We teach you what we're willing to share. And finally, human observers in your government. Not rulers, not conquerors. Observers who make sure you never threaten Earth again." "You want to occupy us," Zekthar said bitterly. "No," Sarah corrected. "We want to ensure our safety." "There's a difference. You'll still govern yourselves. You'll still control your own worlds, but you'll do it under the watch of a species that you tried to exterminate. Consider it a fair trade," Zekthar wanted to argue. He wanted to protest the harshness of the terms. But he looked at his officers again, at the reports of human capabilities, at the reality of his situation. "And if we refuse, then we continue the siege until you change your mind or your government falls. Either way you lose, but more of your people die first." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "Archon, I know you see this as humiliation, as the end of your empire and your pride. But think about it from our perspective. You came to our home with 300 warships and tried to commit genocide. We defeated you. We defeated a second fleet of 2,000 ships. We've hunted your forces across the galaxy, and now we're offering you peace. We could destroy you," she continued. "We have the weapons. We have the capability. We demonstrated that when we vaporized that moon. But we're not doing it. We're giving you a chance to survive, to rebuild, to exist in a galaxy where Earth is a power you respect instead of a target you attack. Isn't that better than extinction?" Zekthar was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "You speak of mercy, but I watched recordings of your battles. I saw your soldiers ram ships into ours deliberately. I saw you use tactics that seemed designed to cause maximum terror, not just defeat enemies. That doesn't seem merciful." "It's not," Sarah agreed. "We're not pacifists, Archon. We don't fight wars to make friends. We fight to win, and we use every advantage we have. Psychological warfare, cyber attacks, deception, sacrifice, all of it. But here's the thing you need to understand. We can be ruthless in war and merciful in peace. Those aren't contradictory to us. They're two sides of the same survival strategy. She gestured to the holographic representations behind her. Do you see these species? They're former Convergence members who surrendered to us. Do you know what we did with them? We gave them independence. We helped them establish defenses against their former overlords. We shared technology. We treated them as equals, because they weren't threats anymore. That's what we're offering you. Stop being a threat, accept our terms, and we'll help you rebuild. Keep fighting, and we'll keep destroying you. The choice is yours, but choose carefully, because this is the only offer you're going to get. Zekthar looked at his command staff. He saw the exhaustion in their eyes, the defeat in their posture. He thought about the civilians below, about the empire that had crumbled, about the pride that had led them to this moment. And he made his choice. I accept your terms, he said. The words tasted like ash, but they were necessary. The Velkari Empire surrenders unconditionally. Sarah nodded. Good. We'll send down a delegation to work out the details. Archon, I know you hate us right now. I know you see this as the end of everything you worked for. But you're alive. Your species will survive. Your worlds will recover. In time, you might even thank us for stopping before we destroyed you completely. I doubt that, Zekthar replied. Maybe. Sarah's expression was unreadable. But your children might. And their children definitely will. Because you tried to exterminate us and we chose to let you live. Remember that when you're writing the history books. The transmission ended. Zekthar slumped in his chair, feeling every one of his many years. His second-in-command Vorix approached carefully. Archon, what do we do now? We survive, Zekthar said simply. We accept their terms, we rebuild, and we teach future generations never to make this mistake again. He looked at the blank screen where Sarah Chen had been. And we remember that the soft-looking species from the single planet was the most dangerous thing we ever encountered. 5 years later, Dr. James Okonkwo stood in the observation deck of the human embassy on the Convergence capital world. The embassy was new, built after the war as part of the peace settlement. From here he could see the city below, alive with activity. Species from across the galaxy mixed in the streets, trading, talking, living. It's strange, said the voice behind him. He turned to see Admiral Sarah Chen, now retired from active military service but still serving as Earth's ambassador to the Convergence. 5 years ago, they tried to kill us. Now we're teaching their children. James looked at a group of young aliens walking past the embassy. They wore human-style clothing, carried human-designed computers, and chatted in a mix of their own languages and English. The cultural influence was undeniable. Do you think they resent us? James asked. The older generation? Definitely. Sarah moved to stand beside him. They remember when they were the dominant power. When the Convergence rules were absolute. They hate that humans came along and shattered that order. But the younger ones? She gestured to the group below. They don't remember that world. They grew up in a galaxy where Earth is a major power, where human technology is the standard, where our culture is as influential as any other. To them, this is normal. Is that good or bad? Sarah considered the question. Neither, it just is. We didn't ask to be thrust into galactic politics. We would have been happy to stay in our solar system, developing at our own pace. But the Convergence forced our hand. They came to conquer us and we had to respond. Now we're living with the consequences of that choice. The consequences being galactic dominance, the consequences being responsibility. Sarah's expression was serious. We broke the Convergence. We scattered their fleets, freed their subject species, and rewrote the rules of galactic politics. Now we have to help maintain order. We have to arbitrate disputes. We have to be the power that everyone fears enough to behave. It's exhausting. James laughed softly. Careful. You sound like the Convergence justifying their empire. Maybe. Sarah didn't seem bothered by the comparison. The difference is that we enforce a harsh peace, but we don't enslave. We conquer, but we don't annihilate. We demand respect, but we offer cooperation. It's not perfect, but it's better than what came before. Do you ever regret it? The war, the destruction, all of it? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Every day, she said finally, I think about the 30,000 humans who died. I think about Lieutenant Tanaka ramming her fighter into that dreadnought. I think about the millions of aliens who died because their leaders made a stupid decision. Yes, I regret the necessity of it all. But do I regret fighting back? No, never. They came to our home. They tried to murder 4 million people in Sydney just to make a point. If we had been weaker, if we had surrendered, humanity would be extinct or enslaved right now. So we did what we had to do, and if I could go back in time knowing what I know now, I would make the same choices again. James nodded slowly. I spoke with Archon Zekthar last week. He's old now, retired from military service. He works as a historian, teaching young Velkari about the war. What does he teach them? That arrogance is the most dangerous weapon you can carry. That underestimating an enemy based on appearances is fatal. That mercy is a gift, not a right. James smiled slightly. He told me that he hates us, that he'll probably hate us until the day he dies, but that he also understands why we did what we did. That's more than I expected from him. He said something else. He said that the Velkari had conquered over 200 species and they all resented it. They were kept in line by fear and force, but Earth conquered no one. We freed the conquered, defeated the conquerors, and then offered peace. He doesn't understand it. His culture doesn't have a framework for that kind of behavior. Sarah looked out at the city again. We're not conquerors, James, we're survivors. There's a difference. Conquerors take because they can. Survivors take only what they need and defend what they have. The galaxy is still learning that distinction. A chime sounded. Sarah checked her communicator. The council meeting is starting. Are you coming? What's the topic today? The Thaxian Republic wants to join the Earth Alliance. It would be the 20th species to do so since the war ended. James raised his eyebrows. The Thaxians? They sent ships against us in the second battle. They did. And now they want our protection against the remnants of the Convergence who still blame them for supporting the war. It's complicated. Sarah started toward the door, then paused. You know what the strangest part is? We're becoming what the Convergence was, a dominant power that other species look to for protection and leadership. We swore we would never be like them, and yet here we are. Are we like them? No, Sarah said firmly. We're not. The Convergence ruled through fear and subjugation. Species joined them because they had no choice. Species are joining the Earth Alliance because they want to. Because they see us as the better option. That's not the same thing. But we still rule through strength. Our military is the most powerful in the known galaxy. Species respect us because they fear what we can do to them. True, but we also share technology. We offer mutual defense pacts. We don't extract tribute or demand submission. We're building something new. An alliance of equals who recognize that working together is better than fighting each other. Sarah smiled. It's not perfect. We still make mistakes. We still use our power to get what we want sometimes, but we're trying to be better than what came before. The council chamber was filled with representatives from various species. Some were former Convergence members, grateful to be free of that empire's control. Others were independent worlds that had chosen to ally with Earth for protection. And a few were even former enemies like the Velkari, who now maintained cordial if not warm relations with humanity. The Thaxian ambassador, an insectoid being named Crixta, stood before the assembly. The Thaxian Republic formally requests admission to the Earth Alliance, Crixta said, their wings buzzing with nervous energy. We understand that our species fought against humanity in the war. We understand that trust will take time to build, but we believe in the principles of the Alliance, self-determination, mutual defense, and cooperation among equals. Sarah looked at the other council members. She saw some nods of approval, some looks of skepticism. The vote would be close. The Thaxians sent warships to destroy us, said a representative from the Aquari, a species that had remained neutral during the war. How can we trust them now? Because they're afraid, Sarah replied bluntly. The Convergence remnants blame them for the war's failure. The Velkari Empire is gone, but there are still warlords out there with fleets and grudges. The Thaxians need protection, and they're willing to swallow their pride to ask for it. Is that a good enough reason to admit them? It's an honest reason. Sarah stood, addressing the entire council. Every species in this alliance has their own motivations. Some joined because they admired our technology. Some joined because they wanted protection. Some joined because they believed in our ideals. The Thaxians are joining because they're afraid. That doesn't make them less worthy of membership. It makes them realistic. She turned to the Thaxian ambassador. But let me be clear. If you join the Alliance, you follow Alliance rules. You contribute to mutual defense. You share technology. You treat other members as equals. And if you ever raise weapons against another member species, we will remove you, by force if necessary. Is that understood? Krixta's wings stilled. It is understood, Admiral Chen. We accept these terms. The vote was called. By a narrow margin, the Thaxian Republic was admitted to the Earth Alliance. Krixta bowed deeply, their species' gesture of respect, and left the chamber. Sarah watched them go, wondering if she had made the right decision. You're worried, James observed after the meeting. Always, we're building something unprecedented. An interstellar alliance based on cooperation rather than conquest. It could change the galaxy, or it could collapse into the same old patterns of dominance and submission. Which do you think it will be? Sarah looked out the window again at the aliens walking through the city below. I think it depends on us. On whether we can remember where we came from and not become what we fought against. On whether we can be strong enough to protect the weak without becoming oppressors ourselves. She turned back to James. The Convergents thought we were prey. They didn't realize that on Earth, the prey evolved alongside the predators. We learned to be both. We learned when to run and when to fight, when to show mercy and when to show strength. That's what made us survivors. And now we're teaching the galaxy those lessons, whether they want to learn them or not. In a small apartment on the Velkari homeworld, a young student named Takari studied human history on her computer. She was fascinated by the war, by the species that had defeated her people so thoroughly. The official histories taught that the Velkari had made a mistake, that they had underestimated the humans, that the price of that mistake had been the Empire. But Takari wanted to understand more. She accessed human databases, reading their own accounts of the war. She watched recordings of the battles, heard human voices describing their strategies and tactics, and slowly she began to understand. The humans hadn't been lucky. They hadn't been more advanced. They had simply been desperate in a way the Velkari never understood. They had fought with the fury of a species that knew extinction was the alternative to victory. Every weapon, every tactic, every sacrifice, it had all been aimed at one goal: survival. Takari wrote in her journal that night, "We thought we were the hunters. We thought we were strong because we had conquered so many worlds, but we had never faced a true threat. We had never fought an enemy that would rather die than surrender. The humans showed us what real warriors look like. Not conquerors, but survivors, and the difference almost destroyed us." She closed her computer and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the death world that had spawned the most dangerous species in the galaxy. A species that could be merciful or merciless depending on how you approach them. A species that had rewritten the rules of galactic politics through sheer force of will and weapons. And Takari wondered what would happen when humanity finally turned its attention outward, beyond defense and into true exploration. What would they find? What would they build? What would they become? One thing was certain. The galaxy would never underestimate them again. On Earth, in a small memorial garden outside the United Defense Council headquarters, Sarah Chen stood before a wall of names. 30,000 names. Every human who had died in the war. She came here every year on the anniversary of the first battle, to remember the cost of survival. "Do you think they'd be proud of what we built?" James asked, standing beside her. He came every year, too. Some would be. Some would be horrified. Some would think we didn't go far enough. Some would think we went too far. Sarah touched the name of Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, the pilot who had rammed her fighter into a dreadnought. But they all did their duty. They fought for Earth. They died so humanity could survive. And because of them, we're not just survivors anymore. We're builders. We're creating something new. A better galaxy, a different galaxy. Whether it's better remains to be seen. But it's ours. We shaped it. We earned our place in it. Not through conquest, but through the strength to defend ourselves and the wisdom to offer peace to those who accepted it. James was quiet for a moment. Archon Zekthar told me something else. He said that in 1,000 years, when the Velkari tell stories about their history, the war with Earth will be taught as a cautionary tale, a warning about pride and underestimation. But he said that humanity's story will be taught differently. How? As a legend. The prey species from the death world that became predators. The survivors who rewrote the rules. The species that the galaxy tried to break and failed. James smiled. He said that young Velkari already tell stories about humans. Some are afraid of us. Some admire us. But all of them respect us. Good. Sarah turned away from the memorial wall. Respect we can work with. Respect means they'll think twice before threatening us again, and if they're smart, they'll never threaten us at all. They walked through the garden in comfortable silence. Around them, Earth continued its daily life. People went to work, children played, civilization thrived. The war was over. Humanity had survived, and the galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Never underestimate a death world species. Never assume the prey is helpless. Never mistake mercy for weakness. And above all, never threaten Earth unless you're prepared to face total war from a species that has been perfecting the art of survival for 4 million years. The Convergence had learned that lesson the hard way. They had come to Earth expecting easy conquest. Instead, they had found warriors hiding behind civilian facades, weapons disguised as peaceful technology, and a capacity for violence that shocked the galaxy. They had made one move. They had tried to destroy Sydney, and in doing so, they had awakened something that should have been left alone. They had started a war they couldn't win against an enemy they didn't understand. Now they lived with the consequences. A shattered empire, a rewritten galaxy, and the knowledge that somewhere in the cosmos, on a blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star, there lived a species that would never be conquered, never be broken, never be anything but survivors. And if anyone else was foolish enough to threaten them, they would learn the same lesson the Convergence had learned. They would regret it, all of it.